My name is Olivia Carter, and today I am 32 years old. I am standing at the Harvard Business School graduation ceremony, surrounded by a sea of red gowns and the excited chatter of thousands of graduates and their families. The sun shines brightly on this perfect June morning as I prepare to walk across the stage and finally receive my MBA degree, a milestone I have worked tirelessly to achieve. Yet just moments before, my phone buzzed with a message that shattered the excitement in my chest. It was from my father, Edward Carter, the man whose approval I had long sought only to be met with cold dismissal. His text was brief, brutal, and final. After today, do not expect any financial help from me. You are 32. It is time you live on your own. That message hit me like a thunderclap, not because it was unexpected. My father's words have always been sharp and unforgiving, but because today of all days, when celebration should drown out the pain, he chose to remind me that I was still not good enough. Despite never asking him for money in over 7 years, despite quietly supporting my mother through the chaos he created, I was once again cast as the failure in his eyes. As the crowd around me erupted in applause for other graduates, I felt a surge of anger and determination. I am not the helpless daughter he thinks I am. I have built something from scratch, a health technology startup that is on the verge of going public with a valuation exceeding $1 billion. I carry the weight of years of rejection and control, but also the fire of triumph. This day, my story will change. The IPO announcement will break through the walls of doubt, and everyone, including my father, will finally hear my success. But this victory is more than financial. It is a declaration of independence, a reclaiming of my identity. The woman they wrote off is here to stay. Growing up in the Carter household was a lesson in navigating invisible minefields. From an early age, I learned that approval from my father, Edward Carter, was a currency as rare as gold and just as difficult to earn. He was a titan in the real estate world, a man who built his empire on grit and unyielding discipline. But with his towering presence came a rigid belief in traditional roles. To him, women belonged in the home, supporting men, not challenging the status quo. I was the only daughter among two older brothers, both carefully groomed to inherit the family business. The message was clear. I was expected to follow a different path, one less ambitious, less disruptive. The stakes were high, and the cost was more than just financial. My childhood was marked by subtle forms of emotional violence, constant criticism, dismissive remarks, and a persistent undermining of my confidence. My father was a master at cloaking control and concern. When I showed early aptitude for math and science, he called it a passing phase, a childish hobby unworthy of serious pursuit. When teachers suggested I be placed in advanced classes, my father's polite refusals effectively ended those opportunities. The silence that followed those refusals echoed louder than any argument. At 15, I watched my mother sign away property deeds to cover debts my father had accrued in reckless ventures. The weight of financial ruin hung over our home like a storm cloud, and my mother's quiet resignation was a wound I carried deep. She loved me, but was trapped in her own cage, a corporate wife, who had learned to survive through smiles and silence. The emotional toll on me was profound. I felt isolated, invisible, and powerless. By the time I was 22, desperate to pursue a graduate degree in biomedical engineering, my father's rejection had hardened into outright hostility. He refused to support my education, telling me that pursuing a dream in healthcare technology was foolish, and that I should instead find a real job in his business. I was left to fend for myself, working multiple jobs and relying on scholarships. Every rejection, every lack of support raised the stakes higher. It was not just my education or career on the line. It was my very sense of worth and survival. Living with this toxic dynamic, I internalized a fierce determination. If I could not rely on my family, I would build my own foundation. The stakes were no longer just about proving my father wrong. They were about reclaiming my life, creating something meaningful beyond the shadows of doubt and control. Every step forward in my career, every breakthrough in my research became a defiant act of self-preservation. These personal battles were mirrored by external pressures. The healthcare technology field is unforgiving, especially for women. Investors and colleagues alike often question my ability to lead, attributing my success to luck or backing from powerful men. I face skepticism not just from family, but from an industry slow to accept disruption. The stakes were high, the margin for error minimal. Despite these challenges, I found refuge in my work. Developing an AI algorithm capable of detecting heart disease earlier than ever before was more than a career milestone. It was a beacon of hope. This technology could save lives, and it gave me a purpose far beyond the narrow confines of my family's expectations. Yet the emotional cost was ever present. I wrestled with feelings of abandonment, anger, and loneliness. The stakes of this struggle were clear. If I failed, it was not just a professional loss, but a personal defeat, a validation of my father's harsh judgments. If I succeeded, I could finally break free from the chains of his control and carve out my own legacy. These stakes fueled my relentless pursuit of excellence. Scholarships, late nights in the lab, countless setbacks, all were part of a war waged on multiple fronts. The financial battles at home, the professional obstacles in the industry, and the emotional scars left by my family's toxicity all intertwined to create a crucible in which my resilience was forged. This crucible, though painful, shaped the woman I am today. Every rejection hardened my resolve. Every insult ignited a fire. The stakes were no longer abstract fears. They were real and urgent: the future of a company, the well-being of patients, relying on our technology, and the reclamation of my own identity. As the IPO approached, these stakes crystallized into a moment of truth. The battle lines drawn years ago between my father's world and mine would finally be tested on the public stage. The outcome would reverberate far beyond the balance sheets. It would mark the end of a long struggle for recognition, respect, and ultimately freedom. This was more than a business milestone. It was a reckoning with the past and a promise for the future. The stakes had never been higher, not just for me, but for everyone who believed that we could rise above the toxicity of our beginnings and build something lasting and transformative. The Carter family was more than just a source of emotional hardship. It was a battleground filled with unseen adversaries and hidden agendas. My father, Edward, wielded his power not only through his position, but also by orchestrating a web of influence within our family that served to undermine me at every turn. Alongside him was my step-aunt Margaret, whose polished exterior masked a calculating nature. She played the role of confidant to my father, but behind closed doors, she whispered doubts and suspicions about me that fueled his distrust. Her influence was subtle, yet pernicious, constantly sowing seeds of division and reinforcing the narrative that I was an outsider, unworthy of the family's legacy. Then there was my half-brother Daniel, who seemed to relish his role as the favored son. Groomed to inherit the family empire, he regarded me with a mixture of resentment and disdain, viewing my ambitions as a threat to his secured future. The rivalry was unspoken, but palpable, creating a toxic atmosphere where every achievement I made was met with cold skepticism or outright dismissal. This internal family dynamic was more destructive than any external competitor I faced in business. It fostered an environment where trust was scarce and support was conditional, forcing me to develop a thick skin and a relentless drive to prove my worth not just professionally, but personally. Amidst this chaos, my refuge was an unlikely ally, Ms. Harper, my high school science teacher. She recognized my potential early on and quietly guided me towards opportunities that would otherwise have been inaccessible. It was through her introduction that I found a research group focused on artificial intelligence applications in healthcare, a field that promised both challenge and impact. Within this small, supportive community, I began developing the foundational technology that would become CardioSense, an AI-driven system capable of detecting heart conditions with unprecedented accuracy. The hours spent in that cramped lab, fueled by late nights and boundless curiosity, were my sanctuary from the toxicity at home. There I was, not a disappointment or an outsider, but a visionary capable of changing lives. Yet even as I nurtured this dream, the shadow of my family's opposition loomed large. Every step forward was shadowed by the threat of sabotage, misinformation, and emotional sabotage. The stakes were clear. Success meant breaking free from the confines of a family that sought to limit me. Failure would mean being trapped forever in their narrative of inadequacy. This toxic family environment forged in me a resilience and a determination that would be tested repeatedly in the years to come, shaping the woman who would one day stand on the cusp of a $1 billion IPO, unbowed and unapologetic. Launching CardioSense was more than building a company. It was a relentless battle against forces both seen and unseen. Starting out in a modest lab space borrowed from the university, my team and I poured every ounce of energy into refining our AI algorithm for early heart disease detection. The journey was grueling, filled with setbacks that tested our resolve. Meanwhile, the personal conflicts from home escalated in tandem. My father, Edward Carter, wielded his influence to undermine my credibility and financial standing. Rumors began to swirl accusing CardioSense of financial instability and casting doubt on our ability to pay employees and fulfill contracts. These whispers were not coincidental. They originated from a covert smear campaign orchestrated by my half-brother Daniel, who viewed my success as a threat to his own position within the family empire. The campaign reached a critical point when an anonymous email alleged that our software had been involved in a data breach, a catastrophic accusation that threatened to undo years of hard work. The hospital network we were courting hesitated, and a critical contract hung in the balance. The strain was immense. We scrambled to conduct an internal audit reassuring clients and partners of our security protocols, but the damage lingered. It was a moment that could have broken us. Just as despair was creeping in, a lifeline arrived in the form of Dr. Marcus Reed, a respected cardiologist and angel investor who believed in our mission. He injected $200,000 in seed funding and offered invaluable mentorship, helping us navigate the complexities of the healthcare industry and regain lost ground. His support reignited our momentum, allowing us to stabilize operations and rebuild trust with clients. Yet the war was far from over. Behind the scenes, my family's opposition grew more insidious. The emotional toll was undeniable. The same man who controlled vast real estate holdings sought to control my future through manipulation and sabotage. Every victory felt precarious, shadowed by the looming threat of betrayal. But with each challenge, my determination only hardened. The stakes were no longer abstract ambitions, but a personal crusade to overcome the toxicity that had defined my life. CardioSense was no longer just a startup. It was my statement of independence, my defiance against a legacy of control and doubt. This escalating conflict fueled both my professional drive and personal resilience, setting the stage for the breakthrough that would come amid the darkest moments of this journey. The turning point came when my father, Edward Carter, took the fight to the courtroom. Without warning, he filed a lawsuit accusing me of unlawfully claiming ownership of CardioSense's core technology. The allegation was not just a legal challenge, it was a direct attack on everything I had built and fought for. The suit threatened to derail months of progress, draining our limited financial resources and consuming the energy of my entire team. The legal battle dragged on for 6 grueling months. Days blended into nights as I juggled court appearances, depositions, and strategy meetings while trying to keep CardioSense afloat. The stress was suffocating. It tested not only my professional resolve, but my very identity. I felt the weight of years of rejection and control pressing down harder than ever. Yet amid this storm, a beacon of hope emerged. A regional hospital partnered with CardioSense to pilot our AI diagnostic system. During the trial, news broke that the technology had successfully identified a rare life-threatening heart condition in a 6-year-old boy. Early diagnosis saved his life and brought national attention to our work. Media outlets picked up the story, praising the innovation and its potential to transform healthcare. This breakthrough galvanized our team and attracted fresh investor interest. The tide began to turn, shifting the narrative from one of doubt and conflict to one of promise and impact. Although the lawsuit lingered, its power waned in the face of undeniable success. I made the difficult decision to cut all communication with my father, focusing solely on the future I was building. This rupture was painful but necessary. The breaking point was not just a legal battle won or lost, it was a profound moment of self liberation, a declaration that I would no longer be held hostage by the toxicity of my past. The fight tested my limits, but it also reaffirmed my purpose to build CardioSense into a force for good, a company that could outlast the shadows cast by family discord. This moment marked the beginning of a new chapter 1, where I stood not as a daughter defined by her father's rejection, but as a leader defining her own destiny. With the breakthrough story of saving a young boy's life propelling us into the spotlight, CardioSense quickly gained traction within the healthcare industry. Word spread fast. Hospitals and clinics across the country began expressing interest in adopting our AI diagnostic system. Our technology was no longer a hopeful concept. It was a proven tool, saving lives and transforming patient care. We secured partnerships with several of the nation's largest hospital networks, and the revenue started flowing steadily. However, with growth came new challenges. As CardioSense expanded, we attracted the attention of a major medical device conglomerate, a titan in the industry known for acquiring promising startups. They offered to buy our company for $500 million, a staggering sum, and an offer that many would have found irresistible. But for me, selling CardioSense at this stage meant relinquishing control and potentially compromising the vision I had fought so hard to realize. I declined. I was determined to keep CardioSense independent and take it public through an initial public offering. This decision raised the stakes even higher. The IPO market was volatile, and we faced intense scrutiny from potential investors and competitors alike. Meanwhile, my father remained oblivious to the revolution unfolding under his nose. To him, I was still the struggling daughter chasing impossible dreams. Little did he know I was on the brink of changing the game entirely. The tension between personal history and professional ambition added a complex layer to this journey. I was not only preparing to lead a billion-dollar company, but also preparing to confront the unresolved conflicts that had shaped my past. The external forces of market pressures, investor expectations, and industry competition combined with the internal forces of family drama to create a perfect storm, a challenge I was ready to face head-on. As we finalized preparations for the IPO, I felt the weight of years of sacrifice and struggle settling on my shoulders. This was more than a business milestone. It was the culmination of a personal journey toward freedom validation and self-definition. The next phase of CardioSense would test every ounce of my leadership and resilience. In preparation for the IPO, I knew that assembling the right leadership team was crucial. I reached out to Jennifer Morgan, a seasoned CFO with extensive experience in the pharmaceutical industry. Her reputation for steering companies through complex financial landscapes was exactly what CardioSense needed. Jennifer quickly became more than just a financial officer. She was a mentor and a strategic partner. Together, we tightened financial controls, streamlined operations, and developed a robust growth strategy that would withstand the scrutiny of public markets. Expanding CardioSense's reach beyond the United States was a key focus. We forged partnerships with healthcare providers across Europe, adapting our technology to meet diverse regulatory requirements. The company's growth was spectacular, but we kept the IPO details strictly confidential, sharing information only with the board and trusted advisors. As the day of my Harvard graduation approached, my family prepared to attend, unaware of the success that awaited them. My father, Edward Carter, still saw me as a struggling dreamer, disconnected from the reality I had built. The contrast between their perception and my accomplishments was stark. Behind the scenes, the IPO process was a whirlwind of activity meetings with investment bankers, legal teams, auditors, and marketing strategists. Every detail had to be perfect. The pressure was immense, but so was the potential reward. The valuation of CardioSense was climbing, and whispers of a billion-dollar debut grew louder. Despite the external pressures, I remained focused on the mission that had driven me from the beginning to save lives through innovative technology. I was no longer just the daughter fighting for approval. I was a leader ready to make history. The tension between personal and professional worlds created a charged atmosphere as the IPO date approached. The moment of reckoning was near, and I was ready to face it head on, knowing that success would be the ultimate answer to years of doubt and control. This was not just a business milestone, it was a personal victory, one that would redefine my relationship with my past and chart a new course for my future. Graduation day arrived with a brilliant blue sky and a sense of anticipation that was almost palpable. As I prepared to walk across the stage to receive my MBA diploma, my phone buzzed once again. It was Jennifer Morgan, her voice filled with excitement and urgency. The IPO pricing had been finalized. CardioSense was valued at over $1 billion. The reality of that moment sent a tremor through me. This was more than just a number. It was the culmination of years of struggle, sacrifice, and unwavering belief in a vision that others had doubted. Just moments later, I received a message from my father. His words were cold and unyielding. "You are on your own now. No help coming from me." It was the same message he had sent before, but today it felt different. Today, it was the background noise to a triumph that he could neither deny nor ignore. As I stepped onto the stage, the applause swelled around me, a stark contrast to the sting of his rejection. Then my phone rang again. Jennifer's jubilant voice filled my ears as she told me the stock was soaring on its first day of trading. The crowd around me began to murmur, whispers spreading like wildfire. Faculty members, graduates, and families glanced at their phones, their expressions shifting from routine celebration to astonishment. My father, sitting in the audience, stared in disbelief as the news alert flashed across his screen. His face paled, and for the first time I saw a crack in the facade of control he had maintained for so long. The irony was unmistakable. The very daughter he had dismissed as helpless had just become a billionaire CEO leading a public company. The moment was electric, charged with a sense of justice and vindication. But it was also deeply personal. It was not just about money or status. It was about reclaiming a narrative that had been denied to me for too long. In that auditorium, surrounded by the cheers and astonishment of strangers, I felt a powerful mix of emotions, pride, relief, and a quiet triumph that transcended words. This was the reckoning, the moment where past doubts collided with present success, forever altering the course of my life, and perhaps my family's understanding of who I truly was. After the ceremony, the atmosphere was charged with a new energy, one born not just from celebration, but from confrontation. My father approached me with a guarded demeanor, his usual arrogance tempered by a reluctant respect. He offered a faint, almost dismissive compliment, acknowledging the milestone without fully embracing it. "You've done well," he said quietly, as if the words were a concession rather than praise. I looked him in the eyes and replied calmly, "I've been on my own for years, and I'm doing just fine." That statement was more than a declaration of independence. It was a closing of a long chapter filled with pain, struggle, and unfulfilled expectations. Though my father never offered an apology, the space between us shifted subtly. The victory was bittersweet proof that I had succeeded not because of him, but in spite of him. My mother, who had long been silenced by fear and control, began to speak openly in support of my achievements. Her quiet pride was a balm to wounds long hidden beneath years of tension. Even my brothers, once distant and indifferent, started to see me in a new light. The distance that had grown between us slowly began to narrow, not through grand gestures, but through simple acknowledgments of who I had become. This rediscovery of faith was not about restoring old relationships, but about finding peace within myself and my family. It was about recognizing that true respect does not require agreement or approval, only honesty and acceptance. As the months passed, I focused on nurturing these fragile new connections while continuing to lead CardioSense forward. The legal battles my father had waged eventually faded into the background, replaced by a collective focus on innovation and growth. The scars remained, but they no longer defined me. Instead, they served as reminders of the resilience that had carried me through. I had reclaimed my identity, not just as a daughter fighting for recognition, but as a leader shaping the future of healthcare. This phase of rediscovery was a testament to the power of perseverance, the complexity of family ties, and the profound strength that comes from embracing one's own worth, regardless of external validation. With a portion of my personal shares from the IPO, I established the Cardio Care Foundation, dedicated to empowering young women pursuing careers in medical technology. The foundation aimed to break the cycle of doubt and limitation that so many talented women face, especially those coming from challenging family backgrounds like mine. Standing before a crowd of aspiring female engineers and entrepreneurs at a national conference, I shared my journey candidly. Success, I told them, is not about proving others wrong. While that may offer temporary satisfaction, true success is about proving yourself right, validating your own vision, and creating opportunities for those who follow. The applause that followed was not just for the milestones I had achieved, but for the message of resilience and self-belief that resonated deeply with the audience. The flash of cameras and the warmth of their cheers reminded me that the approval I once desperately sought from my family no longer defined me. My worth was measured by the lives touched through CardioSense and the paths open for future generations. The foundation was more than a philanthropic effort. It was a statement of purpose, a legacy born from pain and transformed into hope. My relationship with my family remained complex, but I no longer needed their validation to feel whole. I had reclaimed my narrative and was now using my platform to uplift others. As I looked out at the bright faces before me, I felt a profound sense of completion and renewal. The cycle of pain had been broken, replaced by a commitment to growth, healing, and empowerment. The future was mine to write, and this time it was on my own terms.